Hi, my name is Christopher. I have HSV2 down here, and this is why the herpes stigma makes no sense. Now, disclaimer, this is not medical advice. If you want less information, talk to a doctor. But this is why the herpes stigma does not make any sense. And let's just backtrack and just do a basic definition of herpes. In society, herpes just means HSV2. It means genital herpes. Not to even mention the fact that people can have HSV1 down here, which is most commonly caused by a cold sore, which is not typically disclosed in society and seen as normal and non-sexual and not really herpes, despite it being an oral herpes outbreak. So that's the first point. Second point is that going back, proper definitions here, herpes is actually a family of viruses. Over 100 viruses, but only 8 of them, I guess, infect human beings. And fun fact, guys, herpes viruses are actually the cause of a lot of common health concerns like chickenpox or shingles. So there's HSV1, which is most commonly associated with cold sores, can be passed down there through oral sex with or without symptoms being there. There's a small chance. HSV2 is most commonly down here, and that's viewed as the sexual boogeyman and the genital herpes that everyone associates the word herpes with. Now, move on to the third one, which is varicella zoster or herpes zoster, which is essentially the herpes virus that can cause chickenpox. So if you ever had chickenpox, you have herpes. But if your definition of herpes is HSV2, then you're right and I'm right. And we're not going to argue because we're never going to come to an agreement. But yes, the virus that causes chickenpox is a herpes virus. And that can also lead to shingles later down the line in your life if it reactivates, because the virus never leaves your body. All herpes viruses stay in your body dormant once you contract them, and they don't necessarily cause any health concerns. So moving on to the fourth one is Epstein-Barr virus. Lots of common, as health ailments are caused by this, but most cases of mono are caused by this. The kissing disease. The kissing disease is also a herpes virus, or it's been caused by a herpes virus. And it's sure kind of like, oh, you got mono, but no one really cares. Mono goes away basically and you recover. But if you ever had mono, you have herpes. And there's a bunch of other ones like cytomegalovirus and human herpes virus 6, 7, 8. And they cause a couple, different health concerns. You can look it up if you want, not really that important for most people. But most of us, I would almost say almost all of us, have one at the minimum herpes virus in our body. And we're going to die at the end of our life with these herpes viruses in our body. So the actual concept of everybody has herpes is correct, but not everyone has HSV2. So why argue if we got different definitions? Now, the next thing, why the stigma makes no sense. It was never about herpes, it was about sex. So there is less of a stigma for oral herpes or cold sores, and it actually bothers me that we don't really associate it as oral herpes. We just call it cold sores because, it just comes up when you get a cold or when you're sick. Yeah, it does, as a trigger. The same way that I get genital herpes outbreaks when I'm sick or have a cold or run down or stressed. The actual reason why you have cold sores is because you've been infected by a herpes virus. It's just that certain triggers bring it out. So when you compare these two things, it's not about having herpes. It's about one's sexual and one's not sexual. And we're never going to change the subjective opinion of religion or someone's cultural upbringing or the way someone is going to view sex. So if there's a way that you can get herpes in a sexual way that can be viewed as unfaithful, or you slept around, or you didn't do what God wanted, we are never going to get that person to understand, because those things can't be proven with facts. I can prove to you that cold sores are herpes, but I can't necessarily prove to you that the actions I had that led up to me getting herpes are morally right in your head. So if a subjective opinion is the reason for the stigma, it's my subjective opinion if I want to believe in that, and whether you guys want to believe in that. So next thing, which is very important, is that, I don't have herpes because I must know, or I don't have herpes because I've been tested. Two things. A majority of the HSV1 or HSV2 infections cause very little outbreaks, very little symptoms, nothing really noticeable. I bet in sex ed or on Google you thought it was some bumbling, disgusting, basically just a tree coming out of your crotch. And no. First things first, genital herpes infections can be anywhere in the boxer shorts region. I'll stand up for you guys. It could be from here down to mid-thigh, front or back. So People always ask like, hey, do you have like bumps on your thing? And like, no, I get it on my pubic area if I was to have an outbreak, but some people get it on their butt, on their inner thigh. And this is why it's kind of mistaken for other things, possibly. So with that being said, a lot of people aren't necessarily asymptomatic. Whilst there are some that have no symptoms ever, most people may be mistaking their mild herpes outbreak for something else. And with that being said too, like some people are asymptomatic, so they never have symptoms in their entire life, up here or down there, but they still are infected with the virus and could still pass it on without symptoms by a small chance, same as me. And to go more in depth on that too is some people can contract the virus, whether it's up here or down there, and then not have their first outbreak for weeks, months, or years. So this is possible to happen to the person I got it from. Maybe they had it their whole life, or maybe they had it for a part of their life, and then they didn't have their first outbreak coincidentally until they, I guess, came in contact with me. And this happens a lot in monogamous relationships where it's like, did you cheat on me? And like, no, there was no cheating. It's just the virus didn't become present until that particular point. Now, other point, when people say, I don't have herpes, I'm clean, I've been tested for it. Herpes is not included on the majority of STI tests unless you have symptoms. So with that being said, not everybody has genital herpes, but almost everybody has no proof that they do or do not. Because if you go to the, I guess, STI test and they say, oh, everything's fine, like nothing came back positive. Sure, but herpes wasn't included. So you actually don't know for sure what your herpes status is. Now, blood testing it's okay. You can go and get tested without symptoms. You can get an IgG blood test, but doctors will probably argue with you because they don't necessarily want to test you for herpes without symptoms present, because there's just some complications, whether it's a false positive or a false negative or not the right timing. You're probably going to have to argue just to get tested. And with that being said too, another point that really bothers me about the stigma and why it doesn't really make a lot of sense is because doctors don't want to test you for it because they know you're going to have like a poor psychological response if you were to get a positive test result but never have symptoms. And this is because the stigma and the mental aspect is far worse than the physicality of actually knowing or having it. So if there was no stigma, there'd be no emotional response to it. But without proper testing, no one really knows. So it's usually a shock when people end up with it or pass it on. And it just kind of all circulates back into a bunch of nonsense. And honestly, it's kind of one big mess. And I don't really know how to go forward other than just speaking up, educating people who want to learn, and having a really blown out background because I set the exposure, and this is all probably going to not do very well, but I'm going to leave it in here because it's all about authenticity. But that's all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll throw in some more points in the next videos on the stigma and why you don't have to believe in it, but love you, miss you. See you in the next video. Links in the bio for more help.